A defining feature of narcissism is that they tend to live with what we call alternate reality. In other words, they kind of make up things about themselves as they go along to make themselves feel good. Okay, let's understand that's something that they do, and it's just part of their self-absorbed and self-impressed kind of way. Many times, though, when you are interacting with a narcissistic individual, particularly for a long period of time, and you stay stuck with that person, then there are times when you can have a less than factual understanding or approach towards those individuals, and it can keep you tied to some patterns of interaction with an individual that are ultimately going to be harmful to you. And so today I want to talk with you about 7 common lies that sometimes we can believe that keep us tied to a narcissist in a not healthy kind of way. So let's just dive right in and look at some of them. Now, the first lie that sometimes people will believe is this one. This is one I need to get off my chest. And that is, it's possible to have good forms of narcissism. You know, there are times when people will say, well, you need to come out there and be confident, and you need to be assertive and ambitious, and you need to practice self-care. So if that's something that you do and that's a form of narcissism, that's okay. Go get it. Well, I'm all for confidence and assertiveness and being ambitious and living out your dreams and your good skills. I'm all for self-care, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you are being narcissistic. Let's keep in mind that those kinds of things where you're taking care of yourself don't have to be anchored in the primary ingredients of narcissism, like controlling, where you shove your grandmother aside if that helps you get ahead, or self-absorption. You can still have confidence and assertiveness and ambition and still be a very decent individual. So when we say that there's good narcissism, what we're doing is we're taking forward thinking or self-helping kind of things, and we're putting it under a category called narcissism that really isn't. Narcissism is a destructive pattern. And so it's not accurate to say there's a good narcissism. Narcissists are so into themselves that they don't make room for other individuals. There's an exploitive and there's a manipulative part of the definition of narcissism. So let's make sure that we understand the distinction. Another lie that sometimes we can believe, number 2, and that is we might say, I know the narcissist loves me. And this would be, let's say, in a family or a romantic kind of relationship, or let's kind of take a tangent off of that. Let's say there's a friendship or a work engagement where we say, that narcissist really likes me a whole lot. They're into me. Well, another thing we want to believe or understand about narcissism is they don't really understand the essence of love, because love in its fullest form is sacrificial. Now, temporarily, the narcissist can really like and affirm and seem to be very loving toward you. In romantic relationships, we refer to that as love bombing. But typically, it'll be there as long as you are utile. And then when the shine wears off, then they move on to something else. When they say, I love you, or I'm into you, or I really affirm you, typically what it means is, in this moment, I find you to be useful. That's a different kind of thing. A third lie that sometimes people buy into, and that is, I think I can bring the narcissist around to my way of thinking. Now, I want you to consider this. How many times have you engaged with a narcissistic individual and you find yourself strongly pleading your case? You argue your point. You try to explain what seems to be wise and best, and you think this is going to be the conversation that's going to get them to see the light. And then how many times have you felt frustrated at the end of all of that? You know, there are times when a narcissist might appear to be agreeable with you, but usually it's temporary. And basically, whenever stress or strain or differences come around, they fall back into what's most familiar with them, and their familiarity zone is, hey, I'm taking care of me, and I don't really care about you. So yeah, they're not really team players. They're self-promoters, and if agreeing with you promotes their own self, then they'll do it. So be aware that that dynamic can be in play. A fourth lie that sometimes people buy into, and that is, well, I think I can pretty much manage and handle the dysfunction the narcissist throws at me. There are times when you know that there is some negativity there, whether it's that individual who drinks too heavily or has a bad anger problem, or they are irresponsible with money or things of that nature, and you kind of talk yourself into thinking, well, I can handle this. And let's say they're very argumentative. And I understand that there might be times when you don't want to have to break off from a narcissistic individual. But I do have this belief that says the longer you're around someone who's in that narcissistic pattern, rather than you bringing them up, they tend to bring you down more than that will be. And it's like as you're in their presence, as you're in their orbit and under their influence, there's a probability that they'll either bring out a lot of futility, or maybe you'll start matching pitch with some of their negative characteristics. Basically, the more negative person in a relationship typically wins, if we're going to say they're the ones that tend to have the final word or the highest influence. A fifth lie that sometimes people can buy into, and that is, all people, including narcissists, are basically good. And so many times that you'll think, well, see, if I'm really good around that person, it can bring out the best in them, which is kind of your way of saying, I really want to make that person change. Actually, I believe in what we refer to as the duality of the personality. And that is, there's both good and evil in each one of us. There's the upbeat and there's the downbeat side. And while people can start out having a propensity toward good, sometimes there are individuals who are so sold out towards the negative side that it just becomes the defining feature, and regrettably, they're not going to come out of it. So as much as you want to believe that all people are basically good, some people simply will not come around and say, I really want to give myself over to goodness. They keep going back and doubling down on their controlling and condescending and harsh and exploitive kinds of behaviors, because that's just how they are defined. A sixth lie that sometimes people can buy into is, when a narcissist apologizes, I think I can believe that. Now, there may be times, and unfortunately it's not frequent enough because not many of them will apologize, but when they do, it may be that something so negative or egregious or obvious has happened that they just kind of have to admit what was going on so they can gain credibility or maintain credibility. So they may say, yeah, I blew it, I'm sorry, and forgive me, I won't do it again. Whether it's an affair or some sort of cheating or some sort of obvious miscommunication. Typically, though, after they've apologized, whether it's a year or a day later, a month or a year later, typically that narcissist becomes a bit unnerved by the fact that they've kind of lost some of their power, and they're all about control. So they start going into revisionist history and rewriting what might have happened there. And as a result, they can go back and say, well, it wasn't exactly what you remember it to be, or what I did wasn't as bad as you're saying, or there are some other factors involved, and they start reneging on it, and whatever kind of adjustments might come in the aftermath of an apology don't happen. And then how about this last one, a seventh lie that people can buy into, and that is, other people seem to like this person, so it must be that they're really okay. And how many people do you know that are narcissists who can make a really good public impression? They tell funny stories, or they may be real reliable with certain patterns of life, or they just know how to blend in for a while. But let's keep in mind that the mark of a healthy relationship is not the ability to make people laugh or to be a good co-worker, although some of them aren't as much as that. But over time, when you have a wide array of experiences where there are disappointments or differences or conflicts, that's when you're going to really know if a person is trustworthy or not just because they can come across as likable. So let's keep in mind this. I'm hoping that you don't have such a neediness to be validated by the narcissist that you'll overlook truth. I'm hoping that you haven't been brainwashed into not believing in what you believe to be true. I hope that your idealism doesn't outweigh realism as you engage with these individuals. You want to just slow down long enough to know what you're up against, so that you're going to be anchored in an honest appraisal or assessment of what's there in front of you. Unfortunately, and you know that I prefer to be on the upbeat side of relationships, but there are times when we have to just acknowledge some of the downbeat. Unfortunately, narcissists do crave control, and they do constantly look for ways to be superior, and sometimes they just do not mature or grow, or they're incapable of factoring in your needs, or they may just be fair weather friends only. And so let's be honest, and rather than having too much of an upbeat side to where you overlook some of these truths, I'm hoping that there can be a notion that says, I need to be on to what their pattern is so that I don't get pulled into the dysfunction. Am I going to allow the narcissist to set my pace, or do I have my own consultation within myself and with healthy individuals that are going to allow me to establish my interactive style based on what truth is, not what I wish truth would be? I do hope that you gain value from videos such as this. If you've not already done so, I would invite you to go beneath the video and hit that subscribe button, and we'll keep you apprised of more videos that would come along. We have a new website, survivingnarcissism.tv. There are quizzes, there are articles, and other kind of videos that you can avail yourself to. And I encourage you to just go look through that, see if there's some things that you find to be stimulating there. And we're going to be adding things to that on an ongoing basis for quite some time. If you need somebody to help you unpack in a counseling kind of a setting, and right now online counseling is kind of where it's at for so many people, we've vetted a group that can help you with that. And so we have the link below that would get you to that. And if you need that, then certainly take advantage of that. In addition, we have my online video workshops. We have links to my books and even coffee mugs. Now, I'm hoping that you can not get caught up in an alternate reality, but you can anchor down in what you know is wise and accurate. And in doing so, I'm hoping that that becomes your source for stability, not just some sort of pipe dream that just isn't going to happen. All of that said, then, I wish for you stability. I wish for you sensibility. I wish for you objectivity.